All right, hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at the Cross. I am Reverend Dennis Patterson, and today I have with me Miss Claudette Grant. Claudette, how are you today?
Doing well today. Doing well, thank you.
Good, good. As many of you know, we've started this series, and we want to really begin to talk about leadership and how leadership styles have shaped us. And so I'm glad that you could be here. Claudette is a leader in her own right at her job and here at church, and so it'll be fun to pick your brain. All right. How long have you been at Holy Cross?
Sure. I've been here, I would say, approaching 30 years. I would say I got here in about maybe late 1990, early 1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say that's about the time.
Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times when we talk about leadership, it's people tend to separate what they do at work from what they do at church, especially in the church. What do you do in the world, if you will, as a career?
Sure. Yeah. So I work for CDC. I've been with the agency 31 years this year, so approaching my 32nd year. So I've had my entire career in public health. I've been fortunate to work in state level public health here in Georgia at Fulton County, which is county level public health, and also worked for a community-based organization, and so had an opportunity to see public health or health related issues at all of those levels.
Yeah.
Right now at CDC, I work on the business services side of the house, so I'm no longer in public health program, which is where I started with the agency early when they were doing HIV community-based organizations across the country. I was one of the CDC project officers that helped with those projects. But as time went on, you move up,
Yeah.
and so moving up caused me to go away from public health programs. Although my first love, I see the work I do, whether it's records management, operational policy, delegations of authority, or reorganizations for the agency supporting the foundations of public health science and programs.
Yeah. And I'm sure in the different roles there were different things that you picked up,
Right.
and in terms of your style and how you understand it. Yeah, it sounds. When is your earliest recollection of good leadership?
Good leadership. I would have to start with mom, for sure, particularly because I was 15 when I lost my dad. He was 39, and with 3 kids, she just, of course, I'd seen her in leadership lead the family before then, but it really kicked in for sure. Along the way, I've been fortunate to have, coming from the islands, I've been fortunate to also see leaders, whether they were senators or governors or doctors, teachers, of course, administrators who looked like me, black folks that were leading. And so I've had both mom as well as to be able to see other folks in the community do their thing, if you would.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Yes, it's good to see folk reflected that look like you, and I've heard that a couple of times from folks how powerful that is. What would you say makes a good leader? What are some characteristics of a good leader? You said mom was definitely a leader, and the leaders that you saw. But what are the characteristics? What made them good?
I would say definitely listening. I would say serving. So I'll talk a little bit more about serving. I would say sometimes having to be flexible and recognizing that they don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And that becomes especially important in this day and age. And I think as we work with millennials and other generations behind this disease and the X's and et cetera, we need to remember that because leadership's been flipped on its head because of the era of the internet.
Yeah.
Before, leaders tend to hold all the knowledge or all the information. Well, you can just quickly, just like that, get that information with a Google search. And so leadership no longer looks like it used to, or leaders, I should say, no longer look like they used to, because we went to them realizing that they had all the knowledge, all the experience.
And sometimes they wanted to keep it.
Absolutely. And therein lies
There's a
why,
power.
yeah, therein why it's been flipped on its head.
Right. No, it's so the top-down model, that people are authoritarian model, that this is the person with all the knowledge, and it somehow moves down the ladder. But that you're saying that has been flipped on its head.
Yeah. It really has been. It has been, because if knowledge is power, then knowledge is as quick as your fingers could type the question into Google.
Nice.
And so as a result, as a leader, you have to be mindful that you may not have all the answers. I think one example that comes to mind is with all that's going on around COVID, I'll use this as an example, and at the agency, sometimes we don't get, as leaders, we don't get the information about how the agency is going to move based on a particular directive or set of instructions or guidance coming out of the White House. But the folks that I'm leading are seeing the television report from the White House just as I am at the same time. And so the next day they'll say, well, Claudette, how are we going to handle so-and-so? Oh, hold on, wait a minute. The agency hasn't, shared with us yet exactly how they're going to put that into motion. And so I would say that's a living example of a lot of what's going on right now.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned that I caught, and I want to go back to, is you said a leader realizes that they don't have all the answers, which can be hard sometimes. Can you say more about that? Just in terms of, at some point you have to realize that you have other people.
Yeah, sure. So I'll use myself as an example. I mentioned that I'm responsible for records management, operational policies, operational policies, reorganizations for the agency and delegations of authority. I'm not the subject matter expert. There are a group of team leads that have the knowledge, that they have the historical perspective. One person can tell you 33 years ago sort of how the agency reorged, what changes happened. So I have to depend on them. They've taught me taught me an awful lot since I've been leading them as their associate director. But we have to remember to look to others who may be experts in certain areas. And as a leader, you have to be able to balance all of those together so that really there's some vision and you move as one, if you would.
Yeah, for sure. I've been talking about this leader-full movement. And it's what we talk about. It's not the hierarchical, the top-down leadership, but it's everyone realizing that they are indeed a leader in some kind of way, whether you're a silent leader or someone that's out front. How do you think that this model can help the church?
Sure. Really, I think the church already has the model at play in many instances, because you'll see that folks step forward, or CDC has a training class that, what is it called? But the concept is lead from where you are, in essence. And so that you may not have the title of a leader, but you contribute and you can create and you can lead from where you are. And so in many instances, I see that happen even here at Holy Cross, and has happened. Has it been called out as such? Perhaps not. Has it been recognized or put forward that this is indeed what's happening? But I think it's already happening. So a lot of times we don't know how things happen. There wasn't a formal committee that was put in place, but something gets accomplished and it gets done. So I think that many of us already contribute, where we lead from where we are, not necessarily in the front, in the forefront, but we definitely lead from where we are.
Which is a powerful thing, right? Because it's not anything that we have to learn, we just have to identify it. right? We have to identify that this is what you're using and put language to it,
Right.
to make it a bigger,
Right.
a bigger thing.
Right.
That-
And I think we also have to create a safe space for that to happen. So it's there organically already, but how we bring it forward is that we put an environment or create an environment that says, you know, it's okay and it's a safe place to be okay. It's okay if you have a skill that's been dormant and you want to bring it forward. This is the place it's safe to do so.
to empower, to give people opportunities to speak up
Yeah.
and share.
All of them.
And because you allow, I guess that allows you to get all the gifts. that-
Yes, absolutely.
Now, we're different, we're the church. And so, not to say that you don't use that God is not with you in your job. But certainly when we talk about leadership in the church, we want to know where God is in that and how God has really shaped your understanding of leadership.
Sure, sure. I talked earlier about servant, and so there's this concept about servant leadership. And I see God as a servant leader. I see Jesus clearly was a living example then of a servant leader. I first got introduced to the concept incidentally from a CDC senior executive, a senior scientist actually, Episcopalian, incidentally, and he brought that concept to the agency. And so that was my first introduction, and then through a couple of things, congregational development that I did through the diocese here, as well as advancing authentic leadership that was done. I don't remember the church, I think it's Christ Church Norcross, they did it. Two of us did that one, and CDI, there were 3 of us from Holy Cross that did that. And so the concept was reintroduced to me, if you would. But so I serve from where I am, and I serve at work. And so serving at work, incidentally, I talked about having team leads that are the experts. And so part of my service there is that I support them. The reality is their success is my success. Our success is the agency's success. And so that's something that has undergirded sort of my philosophy for a very long time. And so serving there, serving here, Jesus was a servant leader. And so for me, there's no disconnect in leader at work, leader at church.
Service is service.
Service is service.
For sure. How might the church benefit more? We've already identified leaders, but how might the church benefit that there are leaders in the church? How might the church benefit more from just approaching leadership and growing stronger in their leadership methods?
Again, I would go back to this concept of a safe space. Where folks serve, encourage them to continue serving and encourage them to take chances, because that's the other thing about leadership. We don't have all the answers, and so we can guess the best we can on an outcome, or we can create a strategy and work to implement it, but don't know that it necessarily would work. And so if those same kinds of concepts could be brought forward to the church to say, hey, again, it's safe to try to do something different. We need you to serve. Where can you serve? What gifts do you want to bring? And when they bring them, say they're okay. Not to say, oh, we don't need that gift. We just need to be more welcoming. And one of the things I want to say is that I should have mentioned earlier, one of the characteristics of a leader is definitely humility, or to be humble. And so I just wanted to mention that.
For sure. For sure. And I think part of that humility is realizing that you don't have all the answers, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
so it was said, but you're right. I certainly agree. If the church is to thrive, what must we embrace as leaders moving forward? I think we've kind of answered that. If you could have one dream come true, what would that be as it relates to church and leadership style?
Again, going back to the sense that we are all leaders, and we all lead and contribute. For this parish in particular, perhaps a clearer sense of a shared vision, shared direction. I know we have a mission statement and I know we say it, but how do we embody that? If I had a personal wish for the parish is that we would work to go beyond ourselves. Much of what we do is to serve ourselves, but the need outside of us is greater. Yes, we have the food pantry. Yes, we do the Thanksgiving dinner, but and we do the Christmas, the tree, I can't remember what it's called, but with the gifts. But there's so much more to give, and personally, if we can maybe corral around something that looks like a mission trip, that may start to give us new insight into serving beyond ourselves.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, I think that is it. Anything else? Well, let me back up, because I think all throughout what we've talked about the getting people involved. But would you say that relationships would be important? In that it's one thing to, I guess what I'm saying is, it's one thing to say people need to get together, but part of them getting together is forming relationships and being able to trust. Do relationships play into that at all?
They do, but relationships, building new relationships is also important,
right.
In leadership, in shared vision, if you would. And what I mean by that is I've been fortunate and thankful to Holy Cross for allowing me to do this, to serve in a number of capacities and lead a number of things. So let's go to, for instance, the 60th anniversary celebration. One of the things I did is, yes, I asked folks that I had relationships with to consider being a part of the planning committee, but then I just simply made a call for anybody that was interested. And so I had the opportunity then to work with some folks that I had not worked with before in the parish. They brought their gifts, we used them. Yeah. And so, yeah, relationships are important, but building new relationships is just as important.
For sure, for sure. Well said. And I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.